Hey, today on Free Field Training, we're going to be talking about baton placement. I get lots of comments and questions on the YouTube, the Instagram, the Patreon, Facebook, all of that. In fact, we're live streaming this on Instagram right now. If you want to be part of that conversation, flip on over there about where to put your baton on your duty belt. And nowadays, on your duty rig. We're kind of getting away from duty belt and now making it into an amalgamation of a vest cover and a belt and all sorts of drop leg stuff that I don't get into. But we're going to talk today specifically about where to place your baton. Before we get started, let's all take 5 seconds out of our life to go down below and read all the comments from people who want to point out that the middle-aged ghetto cop would not make a good underwear model. Good, now that we got that out of our systems, let's talk about batons. I personally keep my baton behind my pistol. You can see right yonder. High up on my belt, behind my pistol. And I get a lot of people on the duty belt videos, we'll put links up there and down below, talk about how that's a terrible place to put it, and Flet Tech says this, and this instructor says that, and I'm an ASP instructor, and Monadnock instructor, and all sorts of other stuff, and why do you put it there, and that's garbage, and blah, 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 blah. And then other people say you should always have it cross-draw. Other people say you should always put it on your vest cover. They say it should be centerline on your vest cover. And the problem with all that type of mantra stuff is that you get somebody that gives you an idea, you get an idea at the academy, and you don't really ever consider other ideas. Now, of all the places you could put your baton, behind your pistol, the way I do it, is the one that I recommend absolutely the least. If you can get away without doing that, I suggest not doing it. There are some advantages to putting the baton behind your pistol. So we're going to start with the advantages, we'll move on to the disadvantages of it. Advantage number one, keeping the baton behind your pistol on a high mount rig back there keeps it out of the way when you're sitting in the car. Kind of puts it to the side, you don't sit on it, it's out of the way, and for something that realistically most cops are never going to use, and the few that are going to use it are going to mess it up, the vast majority of the time, that's a good place for it. It's over, it's off, it's out of the way. Second advantage to it is people that you're fighting with are unlikely to grab it and try to use it against you. I've heard that brought up in classes. I've never really seen that happen. I haven't seen any data that suggests that does happen, at least not here in the US where cops carry guns. The third advantage to it is that when you have the baton behind your gun, you're going to one place regardless of what weapon you're going to, and it keeps people from doing the whole double wield thing. I guess there's some advantage to that. Disadvantage to it, if you don't use a very good baton holder that is not meant to allow the baton to flop forward, that is, to go this way, and you're using that in conjunction with something like an Uncle Mike's Pro 3 holster or a Safariland Level 4 where you have to push down and twist and rock and all of that stuff, it can lock your gun up in the holster, and that is a huge problem. So you have to be very careful if you're putting the baton behind your gun to make sure that one, that holder stays in really good condition, and two, that it's not going to lock your gun into the holster. There are hardware solutions to that issue, but it's something you have to work on yourself because we have people of all different shapes and sizes. There isn't a one-size-fits-all solution for it. Originally, when I first started on the job, I tried putting the baton behind my holster, and it didn't work out for me because I had an Uncle Mike's Pro 3, which requires a push and a twist and all sorts of thumb snap and all that. And it was locking up the gun in the holster when I was in training, and I knew that wasn't a good solution. So what I did is I got a rotating holster, an ASP, I think, roto holster, and I had the baton cross-draw. Now this is an ideal ergonomic position for most people. It's becoming less ergonomic as we put more stuff across the front of our vest carriers, but it's a good ergonomic solution because you got your pistol here, you cross-draw out your baton, makes it very easy to draw it and swing it and hit the guy next to you, which that's always good. Everybody loves that. Well, maybe that's a disadvantage of that. Oh well. It makes it easy to get a hold of the baton and to deploy it. It keeps it readily available. Now the problem that I had there was, one, with a vest cover with stuff on it, it tends to get in the way of the stuff. You've got another interference there because the baton sticks up. I haven't been able to find a baton holder that keeps the baton down at waist level, and even then you'd have a harder time getting it out, especially for people that are not underwear models like me. If you don't have a taser and you don't keep your taser at cross draw, that might be a good solution, cross drawing it off your belt. The disadvantages there are, again, people being able to grab a hold of it, and the other disadvantage of having it cross draw on your belt is that it tends to pop out when you fall. Something I've noticed. Again, if you're going to use one of those roto holsters that allows you to keep it at any angle you want, another disadvantage is that it can find its way when it starts getting worn, that roto holster pointed down that way at the floor or pointed backward or all sorts of places. So when you go to get the baton, it's not where you left it. My honest recommendation is not to use those ASP roto holsters. They start to wear out over time. Sometimes you don't notice until it's too late because they're flopping around, and then you have your baton somewhere where it's not supposed to be, and we want to be able to just grab instinctively that baton and go with it. So I always recommend something that's going to keep the baton at the same place no matter what, that you can lock it in with the screw, or it locks it in totally straight up and down so that at least you can find it. It's better to have something where you left it and be able to use it than it is to have it in this ideal position but not all the time and not always be able to deploy it. The last solution, and one that has become popular in recent years, is to put the baton somewhere on a chest rig. So if you've got a vest with plates in it, like I do here, I've got my soft armor vest with a rifle plate front and center on it, you can put the baton into various holders. So here I have high-speed gear pouch that I use for my flashlight that I'm demoing on the street right now. We can put the baton right in there. Now this has advantages and disadvantages. The advantage over the cross draw is you can still cross draw it off your vest, and with these modern holsters that kind of have some give, it's easy to get out of there, it stays all in one place, and it kind of keeps it out of the way. You don't have the same interferences. Sometimes though you'll have an interference with draw. If you put it on your right side or on your left side and you're left-handed, it can get in the way of your arm. So again, you have to make sure you don't have those interferences with your gear, and you're only going to be able to know that by trying it out. This is why we all have a big drawer full of stuff in our house that we used to use on duty. Obviously, any instructor that tells you to put something on your vest cover is going to tell you to put it front and center, because that's where, you know, our strong area is, in this triangle between our shoulders and our navel. And that's great, except every class I go to, they tell you to put whatever it is front and center so you can get it with both hands. That's the type of stuff that's great in theory. It doesn't really work in real life. Normally, we're going to have to put things that we can prioritize that are life and death if they don't get deployed properly or we don't have them available right in that front and center area. That's why med gear, magazines, sometimes handcuffs tend to go up here, and other things tend to get put to the sides of belts and to the sides of carriers and things like that. So that is your extendable baton and placement of it on the belt. If you guys have any comments or questions, put them down in the description down below. If you've got a way that you carry your baton that wasn't covered here, I would love to hear about that, or a holder that you like more than the ones that I mentioned or showed here. I would also love to hear about those. I'm always looking for new gear to show on the channel. If you've got questions, comments, concerns, or you've got suggestions for future videos on the channel, I always need those. Like I said, this was a viewer request video. Somebody asked me about this topic and asked if I would make a video about it because they were reading through the description, had a hard time visualizing the stuff that I was saying when commenting back and forth with people. So that's batons and putting them on your belt and your vest cover. Until next week, you guys be safe and take care of each other. Let's see if people got fun stuff to say. And then I got to get, I actually get back to work. I got to put all my patches back on this thing and put my actual uniform shirt back on so I can go work the mall detail. Let's scroll up to the top, see if anybody has topical comments and questions. Bounty Hunter Bootcamp 1 says, I like it behind the handgun. Behind the duty pistol is very common here where I'm at, and in other parts of the country it's very uncommon. Just kind of the way things are. Different environments, you're going to use different equipment different ways. These SLS, rotating hood holsters, are very uncommon in some parts of the country that have sand. And then in places like Chicago, the Chicagoland area where I'm at, they're very, very common because they solve problems for us. They're very good for people trying to do gun grabs, but if you get sand in them, there's a problem. So a lot of this stuff is environmental. Rikich Hemishin says, I keep mine on the non-dominant front side and twist it in reverse because it rotates. So you keep it on your non-dominant side and twist it in reverse. Oh, so you can grab it with your left hand, like yonder? I guess that could work, if that's what you're into. It wouldn't be my preference. I prefer to use the baton with my dominant hand. Because a lot with these, people don't realize these aren't riot batons. So, This baton works really well if you put a whole lot of speed behind it. Can't do that because I got a camera down here on my B-roll camera, but you have to swing and then flick your wrist to get enough tip speed to make this really effective. It's not like a riot baton. Wish I had one just sitting around, I don't. It's not like a riot baton where you can swing it at a relatively low speed, but the mass does most of the work of transferring that force. These are really technique dependent. So I would prefer not to use it in my non-dominant hand, even though I'm ambidextrous with lots of stuff. Swinging a baton, definitely a right-handed affair for me. Rika Millison says auto-lock batons with buttons and without extendable sizes. I have a very old video on that. Long story short, batons with a button that you can close are a great way to keep you from having this extended baton stuck in a pouch and then falling on it when you're fighting with somebody, or breaking it or losing it or whatever else you're going to do because you've got this big long thing that's extended that you normally carry closed up. So a lot of people don't deploy extendable batons because they know they're going to have to beat them off the concrete to close them back up again, and being able to have either a twist and close or ideally a button and pushing in and having it closed up and being able to put it back where it belongs just that quick and easily when you practice a little bit, it's a great advantage on the street because you're not going to hesitate to deploy that baton knowing that now you're going to be stuck with this big long thing. Since I did that video, several other companies have come out with batons with different closing mechanisms that don't require beating them off the ground. I suggest you look into those. Dylan Winter says anything that fire EMS does that annoys cops. We can make a whole video on that. But let me tell you something. For people that moan and groan about guys knowing the intricacies of hazmat and not knowing the intricacies of hazmat when their job is to beat people with a stick, if you're going to make fun of us for that, you should probably know, I don't know, how to prop a door open so we can come in there and help you when you're screaming for help on the radio. That'd be real helpful. Bobby Fett 87 says, I'm an armed guard and I don't carry a baton anymore. I feel it's too much of a liability. What do you think? I still carry a taser and OC for less lethal. Well, you have to look at your setup based upon what realistic threats to you are. You're not breaking up fights, and realistically a baton is most useful for breaking up fights, for when you have a large number of people to deal with and you are outnumbered. At least that's what I use mine for mostly. So as an armored car driver, if you're carrying a gun and you're wearing a vest and you're transporting money, our assumption is you're not getting involved in other incidents, you're just protecting yourself from people who are trying to steal the money. And I could see where a baton wouldn't be entirely that useful. I also don't think OC spray would be entirely that useful. I could see where a taser could come in handy if you have someone that's just crazy and trying to steal money, but most armored car drivers I know, they're carrying guns and big knives if they can get away with it, and wearing body armor, not a whole lot else. Vaughn Emmons says, one of my guys had his baton taken in an altercation a few months ago. I switched to a collapsible PR-24 so I can retain it better. Love your work, Tommy. Oh, it's great. That's an interesting solution for that. I can't visualize how having a side handle on it would make it easier to retain. The side handle batons I found really difficult just to carry around. I mean, it's a whole extra thing, even the collapsible ones, but more power to you if that's a good solution. I assume there's some sort of retention holster that you have for that. Secure Mindset says the Dutch police recently switched from a fixed baton to a collapsible baton. What's the best uses for both? An extendable baton versus a straight stick baton, or especially a riot baton, is like the difference between a handgun and a shotgun loaded with slugs. If we knew we were going into a gunfight, we would carry the shotgun loaded with slugs before we carried the handgun. But if we knew that we might get in a gunfight sometime in the next 20 years, and we don't know when, and we're going to have to be ready for it about 10 hours a day, we would carry a handgun. Extendable batons are for portability and convenience. I can pull this out, swing it, and have a baton in my hand. Not as effective as a baton as a straight stick or a riot baton, but effective enough to get the job done if I need it. If I knew I was going into a bar fight, and very often when I know I'm going into a bar fight, I go get the big straight stick baton and I leave this on my belt. This is an emergency tool, just like a hand. Everyday Dingle says sap versus baton might be a cool video. I did one on blackjacks. If you carry a blackjack, working security or law enforcement, you should go watch it. They're not a particularly good idea, mostly because many states see them as an unlawful weapon, and there's a public stigma to using a blackjack or a sap that I think it's hard to jump over in a civil case. Hey, thanks for watching Free Field Training on YouTube. While you're here, check out one of our other videos, or head on over to the Patreon and see how you can get your name put on your videos like these fine folks over here. All the links are in the description, of course. We'll see you guys next time.